Hello, everyone, and welcome to Psychology 160, Social Psychology. My name is Professor Christopher Gotti, and I will be your instructor throughout the entirety of this class this semester. I'm going to be going over a couple details as to how the class is arranged, and definitely be talking about where we're going and what to expect within this class as we progress throughout the slides. I just first want to take a second here in the very beginning to welcome you to the class. Let you know who I am, what I look like, so when we do have our subsequent Zoom meetings, you're not confused as to who you're looking at and who's going to be the teacher for the class this semester. So let's get started. So what you'll find in this class and the subsequent next class is an overview of not only how this class is designed, but exactly what you should be expecting as you progress throughout this semester. I'll be going over not only the basic elements of what you'll be needing to earn in this class to get a good grade, but we're hoping you'll get out of the class as a whole. In the next lecture, I'll also be breaking down how social psychology is addressed within the field, the different areas that people look at, and what it is we'll try to tackle within the short time span that we have to cover a really vast, wide area of information that fits under the umbrella of what we call social psychology. So let's start in this first video again, which is looking at how this class is structured. You're going to get the information from me throughout the entirety of the semester. But since this is a relatively short semester, only 6 weeks since we're in a condensed summer session, what you're going to get is a lot of information coming at you pretty quickly. Now, most of this information coming to you is going to be in the form of different presentations that I've already put together. These presentations will go over specific areas within social psychology. We'll detail all those areas again as we progress into the next video. And they will try to kind of give a good story, a line of how we address stuff within the field. Accompanying these presentations are assigned readings. The textbook for this specific class is listed in the course syllabus. I encourage you to not only look for this textbook in a local bookstore, but if you're looking for other means of getting this information, there are different versions of the textbook that are found online right now. Some of them are e-textbooks, which you should be able to buy and access instantly. Some are slightly older editions of the book, which you might even be able to find free if you dig around enough. And some of them are just used textbooks that you can have shipped to you, hopefully within a day or two. I'm not asking that you buy a brand new version of the textbook. If you've got the money and the ability to get it, by all means do, but it's not a requirement for this class that you get something brand new. But what I do want you to have is this textbook assigned for this class, something similar to it in terms of the kind of a slightly older edition, so you can have a second voice on how we cover things. I'm going to go over the details of the differential between how I cover stuff in this class and how stuff is covered in the textbook a little bit later. I just want to point out first that one of your first big things you'll want to do for this class, in addition to going over some slides and stuff we'll talk about later, is get that textbook as soon as possible, because that's a great resource and a great way of getting more information about what we're covering in a way that isn't kind of exactly aligned with how I cover it, and that can actually really help with learning, as we're going to talk about a little bit later. The other and final major component to this class is we will have Zoom meetings, usually 1 to 2 per week. There will be some weeks where we have fewer because of exams and other stuff, but the goal with these Zoom meetings is always going to either be to illuminate what it is we've been covering in the presentations through some examples that I gave or intentionally left out of the lecture, or to kind of clarify some additional components of this class, like the final paper or something else that might come up along the way. Once we've given you all that information, or once you've acquired that information, I guess, the next big thing that we have for this class are exams and a final paper. Now, there are 3 exams for this class, the first 2 being what we would consider the equivalents of midterms, so about halfway through the class, and then right at the end of the class, that cover their respective material. There's also a cumulative final for this class as well. It's going to give you a chance to reassess everything after having taken the first 2 exams. And it's taken at the very last day of this class. The format for all of them is going to be the same. They're going to be about 50 multiple choice questions, give or take. If I can get 50 good questions, that's how long they'll be. Maybe there's other ones where I can only come up with 45, or I really want to include 52 or 53 exams. It's not 100% clear as to where we're going with the number of questions quite yet, but I promise when you take the exams, they're going to be about 50 multiple choice questions. I'm going to make them always out of 50 points, but just figuring out your percentage that you got correct on the test, always doing an item analysis to make sure that I didn't have any questions that were poorly written or things that were unclear, adjusting scores if I do flag something as problematic, and then those 3 exams, which will be tabulated after you take them, will count for a large portion of your grade within the class. Now, most of the information found on those exams, if not all of it, is going to come directly from these presentations. It's my goal with the questions I came up with to try to align the questions with how we covered stuff in class and the depth with which we covered it. Doesn't mean that getting that book is an option right now. I really want to encourage you to get that textbook and get that second voice, because what that book will help you do is illuminate a lot of the things that we're covering. Intentionally on the exams, asking questions about anything that's specific to the textbook that we didn't cover within class, but I can promise if you want to get a good grade in this class, having that book and referencing those lectures at the same time is a really good way to do well on these 3 exams within the class. What other things do we have for this class? Well, another thing that we have for this class is a final paper. This final paper is going to be worth the exact same amount as one of the exams that you take for the class, 50 points. In this paper, you are allowed to, or you're asked to, I guess, explore a topic within social psychology that you find interesting. My hope is that as we're progressing throughout the semester, something piques your interest, something feels like it's worth exploring in much greater depth. You find that thing, which you're asked to do for this final paper, is look for multiple research articles that address that specific topic. Now, there's more specific details about what you're required to do for that paper. If you look in the assignments tab for this class, it's going to break down exactly what you need to collect, how you need to analyze things, what you need to write, and all the kind of fine nuanced details of how you'll be graded for that paper. But just know that in addition to the 3 exams for this class, the final paper is a very heavy weight on your final grade within the course. I should point out right now when we're talking about this final paper that much like many psychology classes, we are going to be running this paper through an AI plagiarism checker and a plagiarism checker as well. And that will ensure that the papers you're submitting are really your own work. So we'll go over the details of that a little bit later, but I want you to put it on your radar right now that there is a final paper for this class. It's going to be a decent amount of work where you're looking for information relating to something you find interesting. And you're being asked, really being told, you need to make sure that this paper is something that you're writing yourself, not having somebody else write for you, or not having a computer write for you as well. The only final requirement for this class, well, requirement's not necessarily the right word, it's more of an optional component to this class, is something called Research Participation Program participation, I guess. It's a component to all of our Berkeley classes that is offered at UC Berkeley during the regular semester and during the summer. In essence, what happens with this RPP program is faculty members and graduate students running studies at Berkeley are given access to our undergrad student population, and students are kind of encouraged to participate in a certain amount of studies that are offered by the school at any given point in time, or to earn either some points for the class or, in our case, extra credit points for this course. Now, there's an entire website for this RPP program that the psychology department has created, and I put the link to it on this page. If you don't really feel like trying to copy the exact URL, you can just look for UC Berkeley Psychology RPP in your search engine on Google or anything else, and it'll be the first thing that pops up. On it, it shows you how to create something called a SONA account. This account is something that you will need to create so you can access the research studies that are available for us this summer, and so you can earn a certain amount of credits for this class. Technically, the total amount of credits that you're asked to earn for this RPP program is 3 credits this semester. My goal for this class is to give you 2 extra credit points for every 1 RPP credit that you earn. That's a weirdness with the points, but in essence, 1 RPP credit is equated to about an hour's participation in research studies through the department. So if you've earned 3 RPP credits on that class website, it means you've probably participated in up to about 3 hours of research during the semester. Give or take. There's also half credit studies if you're completing online things. Sometimes there's 2 credit studies, so it's not all perfect, but the general goal for this class is that you complete up to 3 RPP credits so I can give you 6 extra credit points at the end of the semester. If you only earn 2 RPP credits by the end of the semester, you get 4 extra credit points, or maybe only complete a half RPP credit at some point in time. That'll get you 1 extra credit point for the class. I'm going to be giving you up to 6 extra credit points for this class by completing this RPP requirement. Again, it's not really a requirement for this class, but it's called that. And it's something that's sort of allowing students to get a sense of what research is like within the field. And what you'll find is many of the studies that are being conducted this summer actually social psychology studies. So it might be interesting to see a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in class in action by participating in these studies. It's also important to note that since this research participation component is not necessarily something that everybody can participate in, because many people taking this class over the summer that are under the age of 18 or maybe uncomfortable with participating in in-person studies on campus, we do offer an alternative assignment as well. You can find this in the assignments tab on the class website. And I encourage you, if you are uncertain as to whether or not you want to do this RPP component to the class, to look over that alternative. Because the number of hours that you'll need to put into that alternative is designed to be the equivalent for what you would have to put in to earn those 3 RPP credits with traditional participation in studies along the way. If you got any questions about this program, you can either email me, or what I encourage you to do is email the RPP coordinator. Their email is listed on the RPP website. What they can help you with is any logistics as to how to set up a SONA account, how to make sure that you've earned the number of credits that you need to earn, and whether or not you've signed up for things correctly once you do start participating in these studies. They're a really helpful resource, and they can access things that I as an instructor are actually capable of accessing. So please keep in mind that in addition to the 3 exams that we have for this class, there's this final paper and this additional RPP thing that you might really want to keep in mind. So how does this all add up in terms of your grades? Well, what you get for this class is 200 points distributed across 3 exams and a final paper. Again, there's an additional RPP bonus that can give you about 3% added onto your grade, which if you're thinking about grade breakdowns, gets you usually from something like an A- to an A, or an A to an A+. These grade breakdowns that we have for this class are based on sort of the traditional alignment of percentages, and then also the traditional allotment of grades based on the percentage of points earned. Specifically, with this class, We're operating on the standard 10% scales with pluses and minuses in the top 3 and bottom 3% of every grade bracket. So if you earn 97% or above, you'll get an A plus in this class, or 90 to 93%, you'll get an A minus in this class. Just to be clear on this, we do in this class round to the 100th, but we do not round to the whole number on these things. So if you earn 86.9% in this class, that's a B, not a B plus. The reason for this is because historically people have done pretty well in this class, and bumping people up, moving grades around in ways that inflate the GPA within this class even more, it's not something that I'm necessarily comfortable with, and not something we're encouraged to do at UC Berkeley. All of this information is also covered within the syllabus. If you need a reminder of how grades are going to be allotted at the end of the semester, just for now, know that we're operating in a pretty basic standard scale that's offered all the time here at Berkeley. So this might lead you to ask a pretty important question. Now that I know what's there, how do I do well with what's going to be given to me in the class? Well, as I've mentioned before, one of the things that can really help as you're going through the presentations and as you're studying is doing the readings that are supposed to accompany the class. The other thing, which I strongly encourage you to do for this class, is to go over the videos that we're having you watch on a regular basis, not only once, but usually multiple times, going at a nice slow pace so you can process everything really, really well. It is one of the amazing advantages of these online classes. You can pause me whenever you need to go to the bathroom, do some reading, have a conversation, maybe just think about things a little bit more, and then restart stuff. Go over things as you're progressing in a way that makes the material that we're going through a lot easier to digest for people. There's, of course, always the temptation in these classes when you're taking them online to check out while you're watching the videos. Play video games while you're trying to listen to me, or maybe, I don't know, do some other task that makes it so you can't necessarily give your full focus to this class. That is something I strongly discourage you to do. In fact, one of the things that I want to encourage you to do instead while you're watching these presentations is have the slides, which are provided for you on this class website, printed off or up on your computer. So while you're watching these videos, you can also take notes that you can access as you're studying for the exam, reviewing the material that we've covered and making sure that you understand all the different examples that we went through. This also brings me to another big component of that class that can really help, and that's those Zoom meetings. When we get together, I'm going to ask, does anybody have any questions about what we've gone through? Do you want clarification on anything? It's a great opportunity, if you do need help on stuff, to ask those questions, to make sure that you understand things in the level of depth that you need to understand them at. And then once you've done that, gone through those slides, done the readings, you want to study for the exams in this class the same way you'd study for the exams in any really challenging in-person class that you might take along the way. If you overstudy, look at your notes, you reference things, you make sure you can explain stuff, you should do well in this class. But I do have to warn you that for this class, students sometimes struggle with something that called the overconfidence barrier. The material does usually make sense to people when we're going through it. The terms we use seem to have an intuitive notion to them that makes them easy to digest. But being able to differentiate between terms, understand examples of stuff, understand how research proves different points, can sometimes be challenging for students. If you're studying with a lot of intent, really trying to organize stuff, you should be able to overcome that problem that sometimes does impact students in the class. But if you're trying to do other stuff while going over the material, you're skipping components to this class. You might find that this class is a little bit more challenging than you had originally anticipated. And last suggestion I can also give for this class is even if you don't necessarily start the final paper after watching this first presentation, I'd love for you to just go look at the instructions a little bit more closely. Get a sense of what you might start to work on, and then when you've decided it's time to start working on that paper a couple weeks from now, really dive in with the knowledge that you need to be successful. You do these things, I promise, this should be a fun semester. You should have a really good chance of finishing with a grade that you're proud of and knowledge that you can bring with you to multiple situations that you find yourself in moving forward. All right. That marks the end of the first lecture. Thank you for hanging with me so far. I promise these lectures are going to get much denser, much more informative as we progress, but hopefully within this roughly 20 minutes, we've covered a lot of really key things that should help you be more successful as you're moving forward throughout the entirety of this class. For now, I'm going to bid you adieu. I wish you take care. I hope to see you again soon.